In previous conflicts, the geographical locations of our air bases left them almost completely free from enemy ground attack. However, as in Vietnam, when our bases were attacked, the U.S. Army, host nation forces, and the U.S. Air Force Security Police had the responsibility for defending them. Things have changed with today's smaller military and our philosophy of rapid worldwide deployment in support of global commitments. Many of these potential commitments are to remote locations. In some cases, the Air Force may be the first armed force to arrive on scene at the remote Bear Base location during a contingency, and security forces may be limited. Therefore, Air Force personnel must be prepared to take a larger role in the defense and protection of their assets, base infrastructure, material, and personnel. Although work-party security is a concern at established installations overseas, it is not as great a problem as it can be at a remote Bear Base. At a main operating base or a co-located operating base, the in-place friendly forces with a full complement of security forces are familiar with local conditions and can assist the incoming forces until they get their feet on the ground.
At a Bear Base, however, security forces may be limited. Under these conditions, work parties preparing the base for incoming aircraft and personnel may have to provide their own security. With this in mind, Air Force personnel must be able to protect themselves if need be. Prime Beef team personnel must become familiar with the methods and techniques needed to protect themselves under hostile conditions. This video is designed to give you a basic understanding of both personnel and work-party security. In doing so, it will cover the threat to U.S. air bases, the civil engineer role, personal security, individual movement, small group movement, perimeter defense and guard placement, and, last but not least, communications.
Possible threats to our air bases are grouped into 3 levels. An enemy may use one or all of these to attack the base. In addition to protecting the base from conventional attack, base defense forces must be capable of reacting to nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare during all 3 levels. A Level 1 threat includes small-scale activities conducted by enemy agents, sympathizers, and partisans. These activities could also be conducted by an enemy agent, controlled or independent terrorists. Level 1 type threats must be contained and defeated by the base self-defense force, composed of Air Force Security Police and augmenting personnel from other base units as needed. Level 2 threats may involve long-range reconnaissance and intelligence gathering as well as sabotage operations. These activities can be conducted by enemy special purpose forces, guerrilla forces, and unconventional forces or small tactical units. These Level 2 type threats must be defeated or delayed by base self-defense forces until assistance comes from a response force such as U.S. Army, military police units, or host nation friendly forces. In addition to major ground attacks, Level 3 threats can also include major attacks from aircraft and in-theater missiles armed with conventional or NBC weapons. The base defense force may require assistance from U.S. Army and or host nation tactical combat forces during a Level 3 threat. However, base defense forces must be able to delay the threat until help arrives.
Normally, defense of the base is the responsibility of the U.S. Army, host nation forces, or the Air Force Security Police. However, there is no guarantee that these forces will be available in sufficient numbers whenever required to support engineer requirements. In such situations, civil engineer personnel will be expected to protect their own priority assets and to provide their own work-party security, particularly when such work involves locations either off or in remote areas of the base. For planning purposes, engineer forces are considered to play a limited role with no offensive capability with respect to air base security. However, defending Air Force resources is the responsibility of all air base personnel. Furthermore, Civil Engineer Prime Beef forces are specifically identified in Air Force directives to take an active part in the air base defense mission. These security-related tasks make it imperative that engineer forces have a basic knowledge of self-protection techniques and defensive operations.
Regardless of the reasons for civil engineer involvement in defensive activities, being properly prepared at the time of need is an absolute must. You must possess and be able to apply certain individual and group defensive skills that will enable you to become a functional team member, as well as increase your personal survivability. Personal security also involves an understanding of some basic concepts and procedures which work together to provide an individual with a better chance of survival in a hostile situation, while at the same time ensure task accomplishments and air-based survival. If you can be seen, you can be hit by enemy fire, so you must conceal yourself from enemy observation and find cover that will protect you from enemy fire. If the terrain does not provide adequate cover and concealment, you must prepare your own using natural and man-made materials to camouflage yourself, your equipment, and your position.
Cover can give you protection from bullets and fragments from exploding munitions and submunitions. Cover can be either natural or man-made and can also conceal you from enemy observation. Natural cover includes things such as logs, trees, stumps, ravines, and hollows. Man-made cover includes such things as fighting positions, trenches, walls, rubble, and craters. When you are in a defensive posture, a fighting position using natural cover from the surrounding terrain is normally constructed. When moving from one location to another, use ravines, gullies, hills, wooded areas, and walls to provide concealment and cover from enemy fire. At all costs, avoid open areas and do not skyline yourself on hilltops and ridges.
Like cover, concealment is anything that hides you from the enemy. Unlike cover, however, it will not protect you from enemy fire. Like cover, concealment can also be natural or man-made. Natural concealment includes bushes, trees, grass, and shadows. Examples of man-made concealment include the battle dress uniform, camouflage net, face paint, and natural material that has been moved from its original location. To be effective, this material must blend into the natural terrain. Light, noise, and movement also contribute greatly to concealment.
Light discipline is controlling the use of lights at night. Some examples of light discipline include not smoking in the open, not walking around with a flashlight on, and not using vehicle headlights. Noise discipline is taking action to control sounds generated by your unit and using methods of communication such as arm and hand signals when necessary to help prevent the enemy from locating your people. Movement discipline includes such things as not moving around your fighting position unless absolutely necessary and not moving along routes that lack cover and concealment. Movement draws attention. When you move about your position, the movement can be seen by the naked eye from a long way off. When in a defensive posture, stay low and move only when necessary. If movement is a must, do so only on covered and concealed routes.
Camouflage is used to describe any action taken to disguise, mislead, or misrepresent the true identity of yourself, your equipment, and your location from the enemy. Items such as decoy application, camouflage netting, and building tone down are not normally used in conjunction with work party security and will not be covered in this video. They will, however, be included in other portions of your home station training. Basically, camouflage stresses visual concealment. With this in mind, there are 4 areas that should be considered when camouflaging yourself, your equipment, or your location. They include shine or light, shape, color, and dispersion. We will limit our coverage to a brief description of each. As the video progresses, however, you will see how camouflage, cover, and concealment blend in with other aspects to form a complete package of personal and work party protection.
Shine is any light or reflection that can attract the enemy's attention. In the darkness, it may be the light from a burning cigarette or a flashlight. In the daylight, it can be the reflection from a mess kit, a windshield, a watch crystal, or even exposed skin. To reduce shine, cover your skin with clothing and face paint. Also, dull the surface of equipment and vehicles with paint, mud, or camouflage material. Shape is outline or form. The shape of a helmet and human body are easily distinguishable. Use camouflage and concealment to break up shapes and blend them with their surroundings. But be careful not to overdo it. Colors can be a dead giveaway. The colors of your skin, uniform, and equipment may help the enemy detect you if they contrast with the background. For example, a desert BDU uniform will stand out in a green wooded terrain. Camouflage yourself and your equipment to blend in with the surroundings. Dispersion is the spreading out of personnel, vehicles, and equipment over a wide area. It is usually easier for the enemy to detect individuals when they are grouped together, so spread out. The distance between individuals will vary with the terrain, degree of visibility, and enemy situation.
In the event of a confrontation with an enemy force, individuals will normally have to move to obtain cover. The following techniques and precautions should be used prior to and during an encounter with the enemy. Camouflage yourself and your equipment. Wear soft, well-fitting clothes. Tape your dog tags together and then to the chain so they cannot slide or rattle. Tape or pad the parts of your weapon and equipment that rattle or are so loose that they may snag something. The tape or padding must not interfere with the proper operation of the weapon or equipment. After the weapon has been taped, shake it well to ensure it will not rattle. Do not carry any unnecessary equipment. Move from cover position to cover position, taking no longer than 3 to 5 seconds between positions. Upon reaching a new position, stop, look around, and listen. Look for your next position before leaving your current position. Look for and use covered and concealed routes on which to move. Change direction slightly from time to time when moving through tall grass or low brush. Crossroads and trails at places that provide the most cover and concealment, such as large culverts, low spots, curves, or bridges. Avoid steep slopes and places with loose dirt or stones. Avoid cleared open areas and hilltops and ridges. If you alarm birds or animals, remain perfectly still in position and observe briefly to ensure they have not given your position away. Take advantage of distractions provided by other activity and noise to move safely away from enemy forces if need be.
In addition to walking, there are 4 other methods of moving when trying to avoid enemy forces. These movements are known as the low crawl, the high crawl, the rush, and the spider crawl. These methods of movement should be used to keep you away from the enemy by allowing you to reach covered and concealed positions or to withdraw from an area safely. There is no intent to have engineer personnel move toward an enemy force for the purpose of offensive maneuvers or action.
The low crawl gives you the lowest silhouette. It is used to cross places where concealment is very low and enemy fire or observation prevents you from getting up. To perform a low crawl, keep your body face down and flat on the ground. With your firing hand, grasp the weapon sling at the forward sling swivel. Let the front handguard rest on your forearm, keeping the muzzle off the ground. And let the butt of the weapon drag on the ground. To move, push both arms forward and pull your firing side leg forward. Then pull your arms and push with your leg. Continue this action throughout the move.
The high crawl lets you move faster than the low crawl, yet still gives you a low silhouette. This crawl can be used when there is good concealment, but enemy fire prevents you from moving in an upright posture. To perform a high crawl, keep your body off the ground by resting on your forearms and lower legs. Cradle your weapon in your arms, keeping its muzzle off the ground. Keep your knees well behind your buttocks so your body will stay low. To move, alternately advance your right elbow and left knee, then your left elbow and right knee. Continue this movement as long as needed.
The rush movement is the fastest way to get from one position to another. Each rush should last from 3 to 5 seconds. Rushes should be kept short to keep enemy gunners from tracking you. However, never stop and hit the ground just because 5 seconds have passed. Always try to hit the ground behind some kind of cover before moving again. Pick out your next cover and concealment position and the best route to it. A rush move should start from a prone position by slowly raising your head to pick out your next position and the route to it. Then slowly lower your head. Draw your arms and elbows into your body. Pull your right leg forward. Raise your body slightly by straining your arms. Get up quickly and run to the next position. When you are ready to stop, plant both feet and drop to your knees. At the same time, slide your hand to the stock of your weapon. Fall forward, breaking your fall with the butt of your weapon as you continue to fall forward into a prone firing position.
The spider crawl is used to descend to the ground quickly from an elevated position or to move over an obstacle while maintaining a reduced silhouette. To perform a spider crawl, you should move along the obstacle or structure, maintaining a low profile to reduce your silhouette. Place your weapon in your lead hand. Extend your leading hand and foot over the edge of the obstacle in a spread eagle position, while your trailing hand and foot are pressed firmly against the top of the obstacle. Move your lead hand and foot slowly down the vertical face of the obstacle until only your trailing hand and foot are on top. Slowly release your trailing foot while holding on with your trailing hand. Once your body is straight up and down, release your trailing hand, dropping to the ground. You should land on the balls of your feet with your legs spread approximately shoulder width. Your knees should be flexed and your body should be in a slightly crouched position, hugging the obstacle. The spider crawl should be practiced using both the left and right-handed descent. The darkness of night may offer you some concealment. You can effectively walk at night by lifting your legs high and stepping down carefully on your toes. However, a note of caution is needed here. Darkness alone cannot hide you from enemy observation. Night vision devices can help them find you in the dark. Therefore, you should use stealth techniques when moving about at night, just as you do during daylight hours.
For those occasions when engineer personnel may have to move into an unsecured or potentially hostile area remote from the main base or at an off-base location, small group movement techniques may be required for defensive purposes. Under these conditions, personnel are organized into fire teams. Fire teams normally consist of 4 people. Each team member is identified by a number from 1 to 4. For our purposes, all team members are riflemen, with the team leader being the number 4. The wedge is the basic formation for a fire team. The interval between team members is 10 meters. The wedge can expand or contract depending on the terrain. It may be necessary to close the sides of the wedge to almost single file to move up a narrow gully or through heavy brush or when visibility is poor. As soon as the terrain and visibility permit, the wedge should spread out again without command. If two or more fire teams are traveling together, both teams use the wedge formation, with one team following the other. Usually, an element leader is also part of a two-fire team formation. Normally, if contact with an enemy force is not likely, the element leader is positioned between the fire teams and about 20 meters in front of the second team. When in heavy brush or woods, the two-fire team wedge formation should close to a file formation. In this case, the element leader can hold his position between the teams or move up with the first fire team for better navigation and control purposes.
A traveling overwatch formation is used when enemy contact is possible. The trailing team follows the lead team by about 50 meters. If the lead team is attacked, the trailing team is far enough back so that it is not hit by the same fire, yet close enough to support the lead team. When in traveling overwatch formation, the element leader is normally at the front of the trailing team. This lessens his chance of being pinned down by the enemy's first fire and lets him react to the situation with maneuvering and return fire to support the lead team.
The bounding overwatch formation is used when an attack is expected or when a danger area must be crossed. Usually, the lead fire team takes up a defensive position, and the trailing team moves through the lead team and crosses the danger area. As the trailing team reaches cover on the other side of the danger area, they take up defensive positions. The lead team then crosses the danger area and moves through the trail team to take up the lead again. To properly support each other, the team should never be more than 150 meters apart. If you are attacked on your left flank while in a fire team wedge formation, use a left pivot movement to reach expedient cover, form a defensive line, and return fire. This is done by using the number 3 person as a pivot point. The number 3 person makes a left turn and moves to cover. The number 4, 2, and 1 person make a left oblique movement and move to cover. This will form a defensive line of fire from left to right of persons 3, 4, 2, and 1. If you are attacked on the right flank, a right pivot movement is performed similar to a left pivot movement. Except the number 1 person acts as the pivot point, making a right turn and moving to cover. The number 4, 2, and 3 persons make a right oblique and move to cover. This movement will form a defensive line of fire from right to left of persons 1, 4, 2, and 3.
In a level 1 or 2 threat environment, work party security will generally be provided by 1 or 2 people posted on the perimeter of the work area to give early warning of any hostile action. If the work party is fired upon, these individuals will determine the direction of fire, estimate the type, size, and intent of the hostile force, direct the work party to take defensive positions, and call the base defense force for help. As you have just seen, good work party security at a work location depends on perimeter defense and guard placement. In this section, we'll cover fighting positions and sentry guard duties. When defending an area, personnel need cover from enemy fire and concealment from observation. Cover and concealment are best provided by some type of fighting position. These positions can be anything from a hole in the ground, like a bomb crater, a hastily dug prone position, or a well-prepared position with overhead cover. The time available and how often it will be used will determine how well you build your position. For example, if you are attacked while en route to a work location, you may only have time for a hasty position. However, well-constructed fighting positions should be established at all frequently occupied work sites and in the vicinity of dispersed critical engineer resources which are without immediately available air-based defense force protection. Regardless of the type, a fighting position should allow you to fire while protecting you from observation as well as direct and indirect fire. Your fighting position should be strong enough to protect you from small arms fire and indirect fire fragments. It should have frontal cover to protect you from small arms fire. Natural frontal cover using trees, rocks, logs, and rubble is best because it is hard for the enemy to detect a position made from natural cover. If natural cover is not available, use the dirt from the hole you're digging. Dirt frontal cover should be at least 18 inches thick to stop small arms fire. Placing the dirt in sandbags and wetting them will improve the protection. The cover should also be high enough to protect you when firing and far enough in front to allow you to fire to the oblique. Dirt from the hole can also be used to protect you from indirect fire that bursts overhead to the flanks and to the rear. If your position can be seen, it can be hit by enemy fire, or you can be quietly taken out of action before you can warn the work party. Therefore, your position must be so well hidden that the enemy cannot detect it, even at close range. Natural undisturbed concealment is better than man-made because it's already in place, usually will not attract the enemy's attention, and need not be periodically replaced.
Sentries should always be posted for the protection of a work party. Sentries can give early warning of enemy movement or possible attack. They can also check the identity of visitors or suspicious individuals that may be saboteurs. At night, sentries should normally be posted in pairs. The duty should also be rotated so that everybody performs the function at some time. During a conflict, the lives of engineer work party personnel may very well depend on how well sentries know and perform their duties. When you are posted to sentry duty, you should be very familiar with the area around your post, the location of the work party, return routes between your post and the work party, the general location of the enemy, and which ground to watch. You should know proper communication procedures and how to contact the work party leader. You also need to know challenging procedures, passwords and times they change, as well as orders for opening fire, which friendly forces are in the area, and last but not least, relief times and procedures. Of the many responsibilities you have when on sentry duty, challenging individuals is one of the most important tasks. Challenging procedures must always be followed. Failure to do so may result in casualties being inflicted on friendly forces, particularly on other civil engineer personnel coming to check on or assist with work in progress. You should even challenge people you know, such as your own relief. The challenge should be given quietly and at a distance that will enable you to kill any enemy who tries to run away, but not so close that the enemy can rush your post. If the order to halt is not obeyed, repeat it, and if it's still not obeyed, then you must protect yourself and the work party by opening fire. When manning an entry control point, always challenge from a protected position. If two sentries are on duty, one sentry challenges and the other overwatches from a concealed position. Do not allow individuals or vehicles who are not in the entry list to proceed. If they insist, contact the work party leader for clearance. If the vehicle tries to proceed without permission, do not try to step in front to stop it. Follow your open fire orders.
A system of constantly changing passwords, number codes, and duress words are an essential part of the security of any military unit during periods of conflict. Code systems afford guards a quick means of identifying both friendly and enemy personnel, even when restrictions prevent visual confirmation. In addition, codes can be used as a spontaneous alerting signal.
Passwords are codes which a sentry may use to ensure no unauthorized person infiltrates the work area perimeter. Passwords are normally given in two parts and changed daily, usually at 1200 hours. They take the form of a challenge,
Papa November,
and a countersign.
Papa Tango.
The use of letters from the phonetic alphabet as challenges and countersigns is agreed NATO procedure and may be used when forces of two or more nations are in the same area. Number codes can be used in place of passwords. There are normally less than 20 to make response easier and faster. For example, if the number code is 8, a challenge could be 5 with a countersign of 3. The challenge and countersign may be spoken, written, or transmitted visually using hand signals. A duress word is one word used to alert a friendly listener that the transmitter is in duress. When selecting such a code, use a word that is not used routinely, yet is not exotic. The words chow and serendipitous are either too commonplace or exotic to be effective, whereas the words boot or brogan may well prove effective. Use the word in casual dialogue so it is not obvious. This allows the listener to take action without alerting the enemy.
Hands on top of your head. Get on your knees.
Good communications are critical to a work party. The work party uses various types of communication to control personnel, gather and send out information, and to ask for support when needed. There are several types or means of communication that can be used. If at all possible, there should always be at least one backup means of communicating. The more common available means of communication are radio, visual, sound, and messenger. Radios are the most frequently used methods of communication. They are particularly suited for use when you are on the move and need a means of maintaining command and control. Small handheld or backpack radios that communicate for short distances are ideal for work party use. To communicate with each other, radios must have a common frequency. They must also be able to transmit and receive the same type signal. Most prime beef radios are FM and will not communicate with AM units. Squelch settings on radios must also be set correctly. Factors that can affect the range of a radio include weather, terrain, antenna power, and the location of the radio itself. Trying to communicate near man-made objects such as bridges and buildings may also affect transmissions. Interference in the form of static normally occurs when you try to use radios near power lines or electrical generators. Interference may also come from other radio stations, bad weather, or enemy jamming. Common sense will eliminate many of the problems involved with poor radio communications. For example, make sure you are not trying to broadcast from under a steel bridge or near generators and power lines, and always use the best available antenna to ensure more reliable communications. It's your responsibility to ensure communication security. ComSec denies or delays unauthorized personnel from gaining information of value from telecommunication. To help ensure proper security is maintained, use authentication codes to ensure the person you are talking to is one of ours. Use only approved codes to send information. Designate periods when all radio equipment is to be turned off. Restrict the use of radios and monitor your receiver using listening silence to ensure proper net discipline and radio procedures are being used. Use proper site selection, minimum power, and transmission times. Change site and transmission times often to confuse anyone trying to monitor your broadcasts. Use directional antennas when possible. Recent enhancements to radio jamming equipment have caused more emphasis to be placed on alternate forms of communication. One form is visual communication, which uses methods such as arm and hand signals, pyrotechnics, smoke, flashing lights, and marker panels.
For a visual signal to be effective, both the sender and the receiver must know what the signal means. Generally, a listing of prearranged messages using signals is included in the unit's operating instructions. Visual signals have some shortcomings that limit their use. For example, they can be easily misunderstood. Some visual signals are hard to see during poor visibility, such as fog or in dense terrain, and they can also be intercepted by the enemy, who may use similar signals to create confusion. Sound signals, like visual signals, depend on a set of prearranged meanings. These signals include the use of the voice, whistles, horns, weapons, and other noise-making devices to transmit simple messages over short distances. They are also vulnerable to enemy interception and are susceptible to misinterpretation. Their best application is as command post warning alarms. The prearranged meanings for sound signals are usually established by local commanders and are listed in the unit's operating instructions. Unlike other forms of communication, messengers can be used to transport large and bulky items such as maps and documents, as well as oral and written messages. They are the most secure means of communication, but there are also drawbacks to using messengers. They are subject to enemy action, require more time than radio or other forms of communications, and they do not provide real-time sender-to-receiver exchanges. If messengers are used frequently, you should vary their movement schedules and routes to help prevent enemy interception.
As we have seen in this video, with today's smaller military and our philosophy of rapid worldwide deployment in support of global commitments, Air Force personnel must be prepared to take a larger role in the defense and protection of their assets, base infrastructure, material, and personnel. Security at a bare base is a greater concern than at an established installation because security forces may be limited. Under these conditions, work parties preparing the base for incoming aircraft and personnel may have to provide their own security. With this in mind, Prime Beef team personnel must become familiar with the methods and techniques needed to protect themselves under hostile conditions. To better prepare you for this environment, we have provided you with information on the threats that may occur at your base and the role that civil engineer personnel may have to play in defending the base. We also provided a basic understanding of personal security, individual and small group movements, perimeter defense and guard placement, and communications methods. Armed with this information and the in-depth training you will receive through your home station training program, you should be able to meet the challenge of personal and work party security to ensure your task accomplishment and airbase survival.